My name is Mason Turner, 32 years old, and last month I watched my father call me a failure in front of 300 people at his retirement gala. As the youngest of 3 sons born to Warren Turner, corporate titan and emotional bulldozer, I've spent my life being measured against my successful older brothers, Aaron and Brian. No matter what I achieved in my design career, nothing was ever good enough for the great Warren Turner. But that night, when he publicly humiliated me, I was ready with a surprise of my own. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button to support creators sharing their real-life family drama. Growing up in the Turner household meant living under the shadow of achievement. My father, Warren, started as a middle manager and clawed his way up to executive status through sheer determination and what he called strategic ruthlessness. He wore his 60-hour workweeks like badges of honor and expected the same dedication from his sons. My mother Grace was the counterbalance to his intensity, the peacemaker who smoothed over the rough edges of family life. Behind Warren's back, she'd wink at me when he went on his tirades about building character and the Turner legacy, while she never directly challenged him. She found small ways to shield me when his disappointment became too pointed. Aaron and Brian, my older brothers, were carbon copies of our father. Aaron, the oldest, had Warren's analytical mind and commanding presence. By high school, he was already interning at investment firms and planning his business major. Brian, the middle child, compensated for being second-born by outworking everyone. He was class president, captain of the debate team, and started a lawn-mowing business at 14 that he expanded to 3 neighborhoods. Then there was me, different from the beginning. While my brothers played competitive sports, I drew elaborate worlds in my sketchbooks. When they discussed stock portfolios at 13, I was designing and building a treehouse with recycled materials. I wasn't rebellious. I was just wired differently. The first time I clearly remember disappointing my father was at the 4th grade science fair. Most kids did the standard volcano or solar system models. I created an interactive art installation about ecosystems, with moving parts and a light display powered by a small solar panel. My teacher was impressed enough to enter it in the district competition, but when Warren saw it, his face fell. "What's this artsy nonsense, Mason? Where's the data? The hypothesis?" he demanded, looking around at the other exhibits with charts and graphs. "You can't win with whatever this is." I didn't win, which confirmed his assessment. What he never knew was that the judges had been torn between my project and the eventual winner, telling my teacher my approach was refreshingly innovative. This pattern repeated throughout my childhood, me seeking approval in my own way, Warren finding me lacking because my achievements didn't fit his narrow definition of success. When I won an award for a short story in 6th grade, he asked why I wasn't focusing on practical subjects. When I designed a logo for the school newspaper that was so popular they printed t-shirts with it, he remarked that doodling isn't a career path. Mother tried to bridge this divide. She'd display my artwork around the house, though Warren would make comments about cluttering the walls. She attended every art show and poetry reading, while Warren was mysteriously busy with work emergencies. On those nights, she'd return home with my drawings or programs carefully preserved to show him. But they'd inevitably end up in my room instead. Warren's attempts to fix me were relentless. He signed me up for sports I had no interest in, set up weekend business lessons, where he'd lecture about market fundamentals to a bored 10-year-old, and gave me subscriptions to Forbes and the Wall Street Journal for my 12th birthday while Aaron and Brian got video games. Our weekend bonding activities became tests I could never pass. Fishing trips turned into lectures about patience and strategy when I couldn't sit still for hours. Camping became lessons about preparedness when I forgot to pack extra socks. Even watching football games on TV became pop quizzes about statistics and play strategies. "You need to develop an analytical mind, Mason," he'd say. Life isn't about drawing pictures and telling stories. It's about understanding systems and making them work for you. The only possession that truly mattered to me during those years was a wooden box my grandfather gave me before he died. Handcrafted from cherry wood with intricate carvings. It was the one thing Warren couldn't criticize because it came from his own father. Grandpa Turner had been a carpenter before entering business. And he recognized something in me that Warren couldn't see. "You've got maker's hands," he told me when he presented the box. "Not everyone's meant to push papers. Some are meant to create." That box became my treasure chest. I filled it with tokens of achievements Warren never valued: art competition ribbons, notes from teachers praising my creativity. Sketches that captured exactly what I wanted to express. When Warren's disappointment became too heavy, I'd open that box and remember there were different ways to measure success. By the time I finished middle school, the lines were clearly drawn. Aaron and Brian were the sons Warren bragged about at company functions. I was the one he'd sigh about and say, "He's finding his way," in a tone that clearly communicated his doubt that I'd ever find anything worthwhile. High school only widened the gap between my father's expectations and my reality. While Aaron had already graduated and was attending Wharton on a partial scholarship, with Warren proudly funding the remainder, and Brian was class president with early acceptance to Cornell's business program, I was flourishing in an entirely different ecosystem. My art teacher, Mr. Ramirez, became the mentor Warren couldn't be. He recognized my talent for combining artistic vision with practical application and encouraged me to explore design rather than fine art. "You've got a rare gift," he told me. "You can make beautiful things that solve problems." Under his guidance, I redesigned the school yearbook, created promotional materials for school events, and even designed a new logo for the district that they actually adopted. These accomplishments earned me respect from teachers and peers, but at home, they barely registered. Warren's focus had shifted entirely to grooming Aaron and Brian for roles in his company. Dinner conversations revolved around business strategy, market trends, and networking opportunities that Warren was creating for my brothers. When I tried to share news about winning a statewide design competition, Warren cut me off. "That's nice, Mason. But we're discussing something important here. Brian has an interview with the board next week." As my junior year ended, the inevitable discussion about college loomed. Warren had been talking about my future business degree since I was in diapers, but I had other plans. With Mr. Ramirez's encouragement, I'd applied to several prestigious art and design schools, including Rhode Island School of Design, RISD, which had the best program for what I wanted to study. The acceptance letter from RISD arrived on a Thursday. I waited until Sunday dinner to share the news, hoping the presence of my mother and Brian, Aaron was already working at Warren's company, might buffer Warren's reaction. I was wrong. "Design school?" Warren put down his fork with deliberate calm. "You want to spend 4 years learning to draw pretty pictures while accumulating debt that will take decades to pay off with a barista's salary? It's not just drawing, Dad. It's industrial design. User experience, product development. It's a waste of your potential and my money." He interrupted. "The Turner men are business leaders, not art school dropouts." "I won't drop out," I said. "And RISD graduates are recruited by major companies like Apple and Nike. If you want to work for a major company, get a business degree like your brothers. Then you can join Turner Enterprises with a position that actually matters." My mother tried to intervene. "Warren, Mason has a different kind of intelligence. Maybe we should." "Different kind of intelligence?" Warren scoffed. "There's smart, and there's impractical. This is impractical." The argument escalated until Warren delivered his ultimatum. Business school or no financial support. Period. That night, I made my decision. I called RISD to confirm my acceptance, applied for every scholarship and grant available, took out student loans, and planned to work part-time to cover remaining expenses. When I told my mother, she cried but supported me. Secretly, she set up a small bank account where she deposited what she called care packages, never enough to raise Warren's suspicion, but enough to buy art supplies and occasionally a meal that wasn't ramen noodles. My departure for RISD was marked by Warren's pointed absence. He scheduled an unavoidable business trip the weekend I moved into my dorm. My mother and Brian helped me move in. And Brian surprised me with his support. "He'll come around eventually," Brian said as we unloaded the last box. "Just don't count on it happening soon." College was transformative. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who thought like me, who saw the world through a similar lens. My professors praised the very qualities Warren had dismissed: my attention to detail, my intuitive understanding of form and function, my ability to communicate complex ideas through visual means. My junior year, I created a series of product prototypes that earned me my first major exhibition at a Providence gallery. I sent Warren and my mother invitations. My mother came, bringing a small gift from Brian, who was too swamped at work to attend. Warren sent nothing, no response, no acknowledgement. Graduation day brought another stark contrast in Warren's attitude toward his sons. He had attended Aaron's graduation with cigars and a customized Rolex. For Brian, he rented a yacht for a post-ceremony celebration. For mine, he arrived late, left early, and gave me a department store tie with the price tag still attached. "Something to wear to job interviews," he said. "You'll need to look professional if you want anyone to take you seriously." That summer, I made the decision to move to Portland, Oregon, where a growing tech scene was creating opportunities for designers. The 3,000 miles between us seemed appropriate for the emotional distance that had already formed. Our communication dwindled to obligatory holiday phone calls and occasional family updates filtered through my mother. Over the next several years, I built my career carefully. My first major design project won an industry award that made headlines in design blogs but never reached Warren's business-focused radar. When I created a user interface that dramatically improved a medical device's functionality, making it accessible to patients with limited dexterity. The accomplishment went unmentioned in our brief phone conversations. Instead, Warren focused our rare talks on Aaron's promotion to vice president and Brian's successful acquisition of a smaller competitor. "The Turner business legacy is secure," he'd say, the implication of my irrelevance to that legacy hanging unspoken between us. By my late 20s, I had established a reputation in the design community, but in my family, I remained the son who had chosen the wrong path. The divide had become so normalized that I almost stopped feeling the sting of Warren's dismissal. Almost. Portland embraced me even as my family didn't. The city's blend of creativity and technological innovation provided the perfect environment for a designer who bridged art and functionality. However, breaking into the industry proved challenging. I lived in a studio apartment so small I had to fold my drafting table against the wall to make room for my bed. I took any job I could find, barista in the mornings, freelance design work whenever possible, and evening shifts at a print shop where I could sometimes use the equipment from my portfolio projects after hours. My diet consisted mainly of instant noodles and day-old bagels from the coffee shop. I sold my car to pay rent during a particularly lean month. But through it all, I kept designing. Kept pushing my skills, kept believing that eventually someone would see what I saw. That someone turned out to be Jasper Chin, founder of Nexus Technology, a small but ambitious tech startup developing innovative interfaces for everyday devices. He found me through a design competition where my concept for reimagining smart home controls caught his attention. "Most designers try to make things look impressive," Jasper said during our first meeting. "You make things work intuitively. That's much harder and much more valuable." Working with Nexus gave me my first real professional canvas. I developed a design language for their products that emphasized simplicity, accessibility, and emotional connection. When our first product, a home energy management system with an interface so intuitive that even technophobes could master it, won Best New Product at a regional tech expo, I finally felt vindicated. Orders poured in, and Nexus expanded rapidly. My salary jumped from barely making rent to comfortable, and I moved into a proper apartment with a dedicated studio space. More importantly, I was developing a distinctive aesthetic and approach that industry insiders began to recognize. During this professional upswing, I met Sarah Lawson at a charity auction where I donated a custom design consultation. A pediatric occupational therapist with a warm laugh and zero tolerance for self-pity. Sarah bid on my services to help redesign therapeutic tools for her young patients. Our professional collaboration quickly evolved into something more personal. Sarah became my strongest advocate and most honest critic. She celebrated my successes without inflating my ego and challenged my ideas without diminishing my confidence. After dating for 18 months, we moved in together, and I proposed 6 months later with a ring I designed myself. It was Sarah who first suggested I try reconnecting with my family on different terms. "You're not that struggling art student anymore," she pointed out. "You've proven your path was valid. Maybe it's time to approach your father as the successful professional you are, not the son seeking approval." I made tentative efforts, sending more detailed updates to my mother, calling Brian occasionally to discuss more than just holiday plans, even sending Warren a brief note when Nexus won a major industry award. The responses were cordial but distant. Years of estrangement not easily overcome. Family gatherings remained exercises in awkwardness. At Thanksgiving at Aaron's house, Warren dominated conversation with talk of the company's expansion plans, Brian's new role overseeing international partnerships, and Aaron's leadership potential. My work received cursory attention at best. "And Mason's still doing his design thing in Portland," Warren would say, before quickly pivoting to real business topics. Despite these disappointments, my professional life continued its upward trajectory. After 3 years with Nexus, I was approached by several larger companies offering substantial salaries and creative control. Instead, I took a risk and founded Turner Design Studio. The irony of using the family name wasn't lost on me. Starting with just myself and 2 junior designers, I focused on creating user-centered designs for companies that valued both aesthetics and functionality. One of my earliest independent projects, redesigning a struggling medical device company's product line to make it more user-friendly, won the prestigious Anderson Award for Design Excellence. The recognition brought a flood of new clients and, finally, a brief acknowledgement from Warren. "Your mother showed me the article about your award," he said during our monthly phone call. "Sounds like you're doing well enough with your drawings after all." It wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but from Warren, it was practically a standing ovation. A few months after receiving the Anderson Award, I got the invitation to Warren's retirement gala. After 40 years with Turner Enterprises, he was stepping down as CEO, with Aaron poised to take his place and Brian serving as COO. The event promised to be the social event of the year in our hometown's business community, a celebration of Warren Turner's legacy. My immediate instinct was to decline with a polite excuse. Sarah, however, had other ideas. "This is a chance for closure," she said. "Whether he acknowledges you properly or not, you should be there to honor your own journey. Besides, I want to see the look on his face when he realizes what you've built without his help." Something about her confidence gave me courage. I decided not only to attend but to create a special gift for Warren, a gesture that might finally bridge the gap between us. I would design a custom memory box, similar to the one my grandfather had given me, but filled with carefully curated mementos from Warren's career and family life. I spent weeks on the project, sourcing rare woods, designing custom fittings, and secretly collecting meaningful items through my mother and brothers. I incorporated subtle design elements that represented each family member, including an elegant inlay pattern symbolizing my mother's quiet strength. for my own contribution. I added a hidden compartment containing a USB drive with a digital portfolio of my most significant work, a record of the path he had never fully understood. The box was beautiful, perhaps the most personal thing I had ever created. As Sarah and I packed for our flight home, I carefully wrapped it in layers of protective padding, hopeful that this tangible representation of my skills might finally earn Warren's recognition. "What will you do if he dismisses it?" Sarah asked gently as I placed the package in my carry-on. "Then I'll know I tried," I replied, though we both knew it would hurt far more than I was admitting. The retirement gala was held at the Grand Windsor Hotel, the most prestigious venue in my hometown. Sarah and I arrived fashionably late, partly due to our delayed flight and partly because I needed time to prepare myself emotionally. She looked stunning in a midnight blue dress, while I wore a custom-tailored gray suit. Success had its advantages. The hotel ballroom had been transformed into a shrine to Warren Turner's career achievements. Displayed boards featured newspaper clippings chronicling the company's growth under his leadership. Screens played testimonials from business associates and community leaders. A timeline along one wall marked significant milestones in the company's history, with Warren's image prominently featured at each juncture. My brothers spotted us first. Aaron approached with the confident stride of someone who knew he belonged, his wife Melissa at his side. "Mason! You made it," he said, clapping my shoulder with precisely calibrated enthusiasm, warm enough to seem genuine but restrained enough to maintain his executive composure. "Great to see you." And this must be Sarah. Brian joined us moments later, performing similar pleasantries. Both brothers were cordial but distant, our relationships reduced to annual holiday interactions and occasional phone calls. Their wives asked polite questions about Portland while clearly having no real interest in our answers. Mother's greeting was genuinely warm. She embraced me tightly, whispering, "I'm so glad you came," before holding me at arm's length to inspect me. "You look wonderful. Success suits you." Warren was across the room, surrounded by board members and industry peers. He hadn't noticed our arrival yet, engaged in what appeared to be an animated discussion about golf handicaps. I felt a familiar knot form in my stomach, the childhood sensation of being simultaneously desperate for and terrified of his attention. The cocktail hour proceeded with excruciating slowness. Sarah and I circulated through the crowd, engaging in small talk with people who viewed me as an afterthought. Warren's other son, the one who doesn't work for the company. Several of Warren's colleagues made comments that revealed how little they knew about my career. "So you're in graphic design?" "My niece does that. Makes logos for local businesses on the side," said one board member, before immediately turning to ask Aaron about quarterly projections. Another executive's wife asked if I could help her daughter with her website thing, as though I were a hobbyist rather than the founder of an award-winning design studio. During one particularly uncomfortable conversation, I overheard Warren holding court nearby, boasting about his son's achievements. "Aaron's leadership has been instrumental in our Western expansion. The board couldn't be more pleased with the transition plan," he said proudly. "And Brian's restructuring of our supply chain saved us millions last quarter alone. The Turner business acumen definitely runs strong in those two." No mention of his third son. I shouldn't have been surprised, but it stung nonetheless. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. "You okay?" she whispered. "Fine," I lied, taking a larger sip of my bourbon than intended. As dinner approached, I grew increasingly nervous about the gift. The wooden box felt simultaneously too intimate and not significant enough. Would Warren see the craftsmanship? The hours of detailed work, the symbolic elements woven into the design? Or would it be just another, artsy, object to him, confirmation that I had never understood what really mattered? We were seated at table 11, far from the head table where Warren, my mother, Aaron, Brian, and their families were positioned. The seating arrangement wasn't subtle. We were placed with distant relatives and minor business associates, an arrangement that clearly communicated my peripheral status in the Turner hierarchy. As I sat down, I carefully placed the wrapped gift box on the empty chair beside me. Inside were the carefully collected mementos, Warren's first business card, a rare photo of him with his own father at the company's original location, the fountain pen he used to sign his first major contract, and dozens of other items I had secretly gathered through my mother and brothers. Each item was nestled in custom-fitted compartments, the interior designed to tell the story of his career through physical artifacts. The hours I'd spent designing and crafting the box represented more than just an attempt at reconciliation. They were a statement that my skills, the very ones Warren had dismissed, had value, had created something unique that no amount of money could buy. It was both an olive branch and a declaration of my worth on my own terms. As waiters served the first course, I watched Warren at the head table, laughing with Aaron about something. Completely at ease in this world he had built. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope that tonight might actually bring some form of closure, that my gift might finally help him see me clearly. I couldn't have been more wrong. Dinner progressed through multiple courses, each more elaborate than the last. Between the main course and dessert, the formal program began. The company's current board chairman spoke first, delivering a polished tribute to Warren's business acumen and leadership. The mayor followed with anecdotes about Warren's contributions to the community. A video montage featured testimonials from business partners, employees, and industry leaders, all praising the Turner legacy. Finally, Warren himself approached the podium, accepting a standing ovation with the practiced humility of someone who expected nothing less. My father had always been an impressive public speaker, and age had only refined this skill. He began with self-deprecating humor about his early career mistakes, then shifted to a more reflective tone as he discussed the company's growth under his stewardship. When I started at Turner Enterprises, we were a regional operation with modest ambitions, he said. Today, we stand as an industry leader with global reach. That transformation didn't happen by accident or luck. It happened because of vision, determination, and understanding what truly matters in business and in life. I found myself nodding along, momentarily caught up in his charisma. Warren had always possessed the ability to command a room, to make even his most self-serving statements sound like universal wisdom. But a man's true legacy isn't measured in market share or profit margins, he continued, his voice softening. It's measured in what he leaves behind, in who carries forward his values and vision. He turned slightly, gesturing toward the head table where my brothers sat. I've been blessed with sons who understood from an early age what it takes to succeed in this world. Aaron and Brian have not only embraced the Turner business tradition but elevated it. Their intelligence, work ethic, and strategic thinking have positioned our company for success long after I step away. Pride radiated from his face as he looked at my brothers. I felt a familiar hollowness spreading through my chest, the absence of that same pride when he looked at me. Then came the moment that would forever change our relationship. A man couldn't ask for better sons to carry his legacy, Warren said, raising his glass toward Aaron and Brian. Some people are built for achievement, for making their mark on the world. Others. He paused, and his eyes found me in the crowd for the first time that evening. Well, my youngest never had what it takes. Some people just aren't built for real achievement. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the room. Most guests probably thought it was just a poorly landed joke, not realizing they were witnessing the culmination of a lifetime of disappointment and dismissal. Sarah's hand found mine under the table, squeezing so hard it almost hurt. My mother's face had gone pale, her eyes wide with distress. Aaron looked down at his plate, clearly uncomfortable, while Brian shot me an apologetic glance across the room. But it was Warren's expression that burned into my memory, not malice or cruelty, but casual dismissal. He truly believed what he was saying. In his eyes, I was a failure, a disappointment, a son who had never measured up. And he saw nothing wrong with declaring this to a room full of people. The rest of his speech continued, but I heard nothing through the ringing in my ears. The carefully wrapped gift box beside me now seemed pathetic, a child's desperate attempt to win Daddy's approval. The thought of presenting it as planned made my stomach turn. "I need some air," I whispered to Sarah, standing abruptly. "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked, concern etched across her face. "No. I'll be right back." I grabbed the gift box and made my way to the restroom, finding it mercifully empty. Locking myself in a stall, I sat on the closed toilet lid and stared at the wrapped package in my hands. Years of seeking approval, of hoping for recognition, of telling myself that someday Warren would see my worth, all of it seemed suddenly, crushingly naive. With trembling hands, I unwrapped the box and opened it. The items I'd so carefully collected and arranged now seemed like tributes to a man who didn't deserve them. I began removing them, placing them in the trash bin, keeping only the empty box itself, the product of my skill, my vision, my hands. In the bottom compartment, I found a pad of hotel stationery and a pen. I wrote 6 words on it. "From your biggest failure. Love, Mason." I placed the note in the now empty box, closed it, and rewrapped it with mechanical precision. As I washed my hands, I caught my reflection in the mirror, the face of a successful 32-year-old man still seeking validation from someone who would never give it. Sarah was waiting in the hallway outside, concern written across her face. "What happened in there?" she asked. "Clarity," I replied, showing her the note inside the box. "I'm done trying to earn his approval." Her eyes widened, then softened with understanding. "Are you sure about this?" "More sure than I've ever been about anything related to my father." We returned to the ballroom as dessert was being served. Warren had finished his speech and was now making rounds, accepting congratulations and reminiscing with guests. The perfect moment was approaching. "Stay here," I told Sarah. "This is something I need to do alone." I approached the head table with the wrapped box in hand. Warren was speaking with a group of executives but turned as I approached, his expression registering mild surprise at my presence. "Mason," he acknowledged with a nod. "Enjoying the evening?" "It's been illuminating," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I brought you something." I extended the box toward him. The conversation around us quieted as people noticed the exchange. "A retirement gift?" Warren asked. A hint of something almost like warmth in his voice as he accepted the package. "From your biggest failure," I said clearly, making sure my voice carried to those nearby. "I hope it brings you the clarity it's brought me." Without waiting for his response, I turned and walked back to Sarah. Together, we gathered our belongings and moved toward the exit, the murmur of confused conversations rising behind us. My mother half rose from her seat, concern on her face, but I gave her a small smile and a nod that said this was okay, that I was okay. As we stepped into the cool night air outside the hotel, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the burden of seeking approval from someone who had decided decades ago that I would never earn it. "Do you think he'll open it right away?" Sarah asked as we waited for our Uber. "Knowing Warren, he'll wait until it won't cause a scene," I replied. "But when he does, what Warren would find, or rather, not find, would deliver a message far more powerful than any speech could convey. The empty box would tell him that I was no longer collecting tokens of his approval, no longer measuring my worth by his standards. The note would be my final statement in a conversation that had gone on far too long. As our car arrived, my phone buzzed with a text from Brian. "What did you give him?" He looked shaken. I didn't respond. For once, I would let Warren sit with his thoughts, rather than the other way around. What Warren and my family didn't know, what no one at that gala knew, was that the empty box wasn't the real surprise. The true revelation would come the next morning, when Warren would discover what I had actually become. As Sarah and I rode back to our hotel, my phone began vibrating with incoming calls, first from my mother, then Brian, then even Aaron. I silenced it, not ready for their questions or recriminations. Tonight was about breaking free from patterns established decades ago, not creating new ones. Are you really going to ignore them all night? Sarah asked as we entered our hotel room. Just until morning, I replied, turning off my phone completely. Let Warren have his moment of confusion. Tomorrow, the real surprise happens. What I hadn't told anyone, not even Sarah until that moment, was what I had arranged to be delivered to Warren's office first thing in the morning. A portfolio containing irrefutable evidence of who Mason Turner really was. Remember 3 years ago, when Turner Enterprises faced that massive public relations crisis after their medical devices division released that poorly designed interface that caused dosing errors? I asked Sarah as I loosened my tie. The one that nearly bankrupted them until some anonymous design firm stepped in and saved them with an emergency redesign? She replied, realization dawning on her face. That was you? I nodded. Through a series of shell companies. I'm the owner of Phoenix Design Group, the firm that rescued Turner Enterprises without anyone knowing who was really behind it. Sarah's jaw dropped. Your father's company has been relying on your expertise for years without knowing it? Not just that one time, I explained. Phoenix has been providing design services to Turner Enterprises through various subsidiaries for the past 5 years. Every major product launch, every interface upgrade, every rebranding effort that Warren has praised as revolutionary and visionary, that was all me. The portfolio I'd arranged to be delivered contained documented proof of this arrangement, contracts, design specifications, correspondence conducted through intermediaries, and financial statements showing that my design work had saved Warren's company millions while generating substantial profits for my own. The empty box was symbolic, I told Sarah. But this is concrete proof that everything Warren dismissed as impractical actually became the foundation of his company's continued success. How did you manage to keep this secret for so long? Sarah asked, astonished. It wasn't that difficult. Warren never bothered to learn about the design world, so he wouldn't recognize my work or my reputation. My brothers are too focused on their own departments to investigate the contractors their product development team uses. And I was careful to work through enough layers of separation that no one made the connection. Sarah sat beside me on the hotel bed, taking my hand. So tomorrow. Warren discovers that his failure of a son has been the creative force behind his company's most successful recent products. That while he was publicly humiliating me, he was privately praising my work to his board and shareholders. As predicted, my phone exploded with notifications when I turned it back on the next morning. Missed calls, text messages, and voicemails demanded explanations. I ignored them all, knowing that a much more significant conversation would be coming soon. The first call I answered was from my mother, just after 9 a.m. Mason, she said, her voice thick with emotion. What have you done? Shown Dad the truth, I replied calmly. Has he received my package yet? He's locked himself in his study with it for the past hour, she said. I've never seen him like this. Next came a call from Brian, his usual composure completely shattered. Phoenix Design Group is yours? He demanded without preamble. Do you have any idea what this means? The board is in panic mode. Warren is. I don't even know how to describe it. Surprised? I suggested. That doesn't begin to cover it. Brian replied. You've been behind every major product success we've had in the past 5 years. The Meridian interface that won us the healthcare contract? The touchpoint system that revolutionized our consumer division? All you? All me. I confirmed. Though I had an excellent team working under my direction. Even Aaron called, his executive polish cracking under the weight of this revelation. The board wants to meet with you, he said, his voice a mix of awe and concern. They're talking about a formal partnership arrangement. Dad is, well, you should probably talk to him yourself. I agreed to a meeting the following day, giving Warren time to process everything. Sarah and I spent the day exploring my hometown, revisiting places from my childhood with new eyes, the perspective of someone who no longer needed to prove his worth to anyone. That evening, my mother arranged a private meeting at a small coffee shop near our hotel. When Sarah and I arrived, Warren was already there, looking older and more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. The imperious business titan had been replaced by a confused father trying to reconcile decades of misconceptions with newly discovered reality. He stood as we approached, extending his hand automatically, then withdrawing it as if unsure of the appropriate greeting. We sat in awkward silence until the server had taken our orders and left. Phoenix Design Group, Warren finally said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. All this time? Yes, I replied simply. Why didn't you tell me? Why the secrecy? There was genuine bewilderment in his question. Would you have listened? I asked. Would you have believed that your failure of a son could create something valuable enough to save your company? Warren flinched at my words, his words thrown back at him. I've been working with your company for 5 years. I continued. In that time, you've called my designs brilliant, game-changing, and exactly what the market needs. But you said those things because you didn't know they came from me. I didn't know, he repeated, as if this explained everything. You didn't want to know. I corrected him. You decided who I was when I was 10 years old, and nothing I could have said or done would change that image. So I stopped trying to change it and focused on building something you couldn't dismiss. Warren looked down at his untouched coffee. The Anderson Award, he said suddenly. That was for the Meridian Interface. The one that saved our medical division. I nodded. The award you barely acknowledged when I told you about it. For perhaps the first time in his life. Warren Turner seemed at a loss for words. The comfortable certainties that had guided his interactions with me for decades had crumbled, leaving him without a script. The board wants to formalize our working relationship, he said finally, retreating to business terms where he felt more secure. They're prepared to offer very favorable terms. I'm not interested in working for Turner Enterprises, I replied. Phoenix will continue to provide services as an independent contractor, but I have no desire to join the family business. But you're already part of it, Warren protested. Your work has been integral to our success. My work, yes. But not me. There's a difference, one you never understood. Warren's face fell. The reality of what he had lost through his own blindness finally sinking in. I was wrong about you, he said after a long pause, the closest thing to an apology he seemed capable of offering. About your choices. Your path. It wasn't the effusive recognition part of me had once craved, but it was honest. For Warren, admitting he was wrong about anything was monumental. Why did you do it? He asked. Work with us in secret all these years? I considered the question carefully. At first, it was practical. Your company needed what I could provide. And the contract was valuable to Phoenix. Later, maybe it became a way to prove something to myself. That I could succeed on my own terms, even with you. Sarah, who had remained silent until now, gently asked. And the empty box? Why that particular message? A sad smile crossed my face. Because I needed to empty myself of the need for his approval. The box grandfather gave me was where I stored evidence of my worth when Dad couldn't see it. The empty box I gave him symbolized that I no longer need to collect those tokens. My worth isn't determined by his recognition of it. Warren looked stricken, perhaps truly understanding for the first time the damage his dismissal had caused. Can we? He hesitated. And used to asking rather than telling. Start over somehow? It wasn't a complete reconciliation, not yet. Decades of emotional distance couldn't be bridged in a single conversation. But it was a beginning, Warren seeing me clearly for perhaps the first time, and me seeing him not as the infallible judge of my worth, but as a flawed man who had made mistakes. We can try, I said finally. Not as CEO and employee, or even as father and the son you wanted, but as two people finding new ground. As we left the coffee shop, Warren awkwardly extended his hand again. This time, I took it, feeling the calluses of a man who had built something substantial through determination and hard work, not so different from the calluses I had developed creating my own legacy. The 3 months following Warren's retirement gala brought more change to our family dynamics than the previous decade. The public revelation of my role in Turner Enterprises' recent successes, which inevitably leaked to industry press, forced a recalibration of how everyone viewed me, and how I viewed myself in relation to my family. My mother visited Sarah and me in Portland the week after our confrontation with Warren. Away from his influence, she shared perspectives on my father I had never fully understood. "Your father grew up believing there was only one path to security," she explained as we walked through the Japanese garden near my home. "His father lost everything in a business failure when Warren was 12. They went from comfortable to destitute overnight. He spent his teenage years watching his parents struggle, making silent promises that he would never be vulnerable like that. That explains his focus on business success," I acknowledged. "But not why he couldn't accept that I found a different kind of security." "Fear blinds people," my mother said simply. "He was terrified that you would suffer as he had. In his mind, pushing you toward a proven path was protection, not rejection." This didn't excuse Warren's behavior, but it helped me contextualize it. My father wasn't a villain in a simple narrative about parental disappointment. He was a damaged person who had tried to prevent his children from experiencing his own childhood trauma and had caused different damage in the process. Warren himself was struggling to redefine our relationship. He called regularly now, our conversations awkward but increasingly genuine. He asked questions about design principles and creative processes, topics he had dismissed for decades. Sometimes I could hear him taking notes on the other end of the line. My brothers also reached out in new ways. Aaron, perpetually practical, suggested collaboration opportunities between my firm and Turner Enterprises that would benefit both. Brian invited Sarah and me to his lake house for a weekend, making a point to show interest in my career and perspective. The most significant moment came when Warren called to ask if he could visit my studio in Portland. "I want to understand what you do," he said, an unfamiliar humility in his voice. "Really understand it, not just the business outcomes." When he arrived, I gave him a tour of Turner Design Studios' workspace, the collaborative areas where my team developed concepts, the materials library where we explored tangible expressions of ideas, the prototype lab where concepts became physical objects. Warren watched, asked questions, and gradually began to see design not as drawing pretty pictures, but as a sophisticated discipline merging aesthetics, psychology, engineering, and business strategy. "This is more complex than I realized," he admitted as he examined a series of iterations showing how we had refined a medical device interface to be more intuitive for elderly users. "There's real science behind what you do. And art," I added. "Both are necessary." Warren nodded thoughtfully. "I never gave you credit for the analytical side of this work. I saw only the creative aspects and assumed that meant it wasn't rigorous or valuable." "Different kinds of value," I said, "but real nonetheless." That evening, over dinner with Sarah, Warren asked if I would consider collaborating with him on a small project, redesigning some community spaces at a retirement home where he volunteered. "Nothing commercial," he clarified. "Just something useful for people who need it." I thought perhaps we could build something together. It was a peace offering. A chance to work side by side as equals rather than as judge and judged. I accepted. Over the following weeks, Warren and I spent hours on video calls discussing the project. He brought practical considerations about durability and maintenance. I contributed insights about accessibility and emotional comfort. For the first time, we were partners rather than adversaries. When the project was completed, a series of modular seating areas that could be reconfigured for different activities while accommodating various mobility needs. Warren sent me a photo of seniors using the space, their faces bright with engagement. "You've done good work here," his message read. "Different from what I would have done, but better for it." From Warren, this was high praise indeed. 3 months after the gala, my parents hosted a family dinner at their home, the first time all 3 sons and their partners had gathered without the pretext of a holiday or special occasion. Warren had insisted on cooking, producing a surprisingly competent meal that reflected his newfound interest in creative expression. During dessert, Warren cleared his throat in a way that usually preceded a pronouncement. We all tensed slightly, old habits dying hard. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, "about success and what it means." He looked around the table, making eye contact with each of us. "I spent 40 years believing there was only one valid path, the one I followed and encouraged Aaron and Brian to follow. I was wrong. Mason," he turned to me, "your path was different but no less valid. Your success is real and meaningful. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." The wooden box, the one I had given him empty at the gala, sat on his desk in the study. I had noticed it earlier, now filled with new items, photos of all 3 sons at various ages. Mementos from each of our careers, tokens of a father trying to appreciate each child for who they actually were rather than who he had wanted them to be. Our relationship wasn't magically healed. Warren still occasionally slipped into old patterns of judgment, and I sometimes reacted with the defensiveness of a child seeking approval. But we were learning a new way of engaging with each other, as adults with different strengths and perspectives, both worthy of respect. The last time I saw the box, it contained a new item. A small model of the seating area Warren and I had designed together, symbolizing not just our collaboration, but the possibility of building something new on the foundation of our complicated past. As I think about our journey, from the painful dismissal at the retirement gala to the tentative reconciliation we're now building, I've realized that true success isn't measured by titles, awards, or even a father's approval. It's found in the courage to define your own path, the resilience to pursue it despite obstacles, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the approval we most need is our own. Have you ever had to stand up for your own definition of success against someone who couldn't see your value? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of finding self-worth beyond others' expectations resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges. And if you know someone struggling with parental expectations, share this video. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth isn't determined by others' ability to see it.